With that, I'd like to say, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce the next governor of the state of Texas.
Hey, let's hear it for President Darrell Kyle and the steelworkers out here in Beaumont, Texas, Jefferson County. There are few people that I have met in my years on this planet who will fight as fiercely as this man has for his members, for this community, for our state, for working women and men everywhere. The first time I met him, as he said, right here in this hall, it looked nothing like this. In fact, it looked more like a grocery store than it did anything else. You, the people of Jefferson County, you, the people of Beaumont, you, our fellow Texans, contributed to make sure that those workers who had been locked out, and I want to make sure everyone understands they did not go on strike, they did not want to walk out. In fact, when that company, one of the most profitable corporations on the planet, needed their labor, when there was flooding and it was feet deep and they needed someone to go in and make repairs and risk their lives in order to do it, when it was freezing and the power was out, whatever the conditions, the men and women of this community would show up, and they found themselves locked out for making the most common sense, simple, just demands from that corporation, not only for themselves, for their fellow workers, and for the generations that would follow. Because as you all know, so many who work for this corporation right now are not the first, not the second, they're the third or fourth generation of their family to add that value in the billions of dollars. Darrell Kyle and the others here organized the community, and there was a pantry of every kind of food that you could imagine right here. Every kind of toiletry that you might need for your home. There was a meat locker back here, any cut of meat that you wanted to get, because these proud steelworkers, locked out, were working stringing up Christmas lights at Christmas time, taking on second and third jobs to try to fend for themselves and their families, doing everything they could to survive. This community rallied together and got behind them. I am so grateful that that lockout has ended. These men and women are back to work right now. But I know they, to a person, will never forget the generosity of this community, or the leadership of President Kyle, or the fact that being a member of a union still counts in Texas for something. Because we look out for one another, we stand up for each other, and we will fight, and we will fight until we win. And it reminds us that we've got to draw some lines right now in this state. Got to decide which side of that line we're going to be on. Do we stand with these workers who have produced the value, really who made this town so economically successful? Because not only do they take that pay home to themselves and their families, generation after generation, they spend it in this community, at our stores, helping businesses survive, making sure that we can hire more people in private enterprise through entrepreneurship. Got to make sure that we stay with them when they're up against a corporation that seeks to crush them and use their extraordinary leverage to make sure that they can continue to exact from these workers everything while giving them nothing. This state likes to call itself, at least those who are in power right now, a right-to-work state, which means that it's very hard to join a union. And then when you're a member of a union, it's really hard to band together and use the leverage of the value that you provide to get better working conditions, safer working conditions, better pay, ensure that new hires get the same deal that you fought and won for yourself and the generation that you're a part of. If we have anything to do with it, after we win this election, this will be a right to organize state, so anyone can come together, join the steelworkers, join the electricians, join the pipe fitters and the plumbers, the carpenters, the communication workers. Every man and woman who wants to work, but wants to work with dignity, want to be paid a fair wage for a fair day's labor. Now that's not revolutionary. That's not socialist. That's not even Democratic Party. That is Texas. That is America. Those are our fundamental values. And in a state where more men and women work for below a living wage than in any other state in the union, in a state where the minimum wage is still $7.25 an hour, in a state where women are paid a fraction of what men are paid for doing the same work, providing the same value in some of the same organizations, we need a governor who's going to stand up on the side of working men and working women. Are you all with me on this? We stand with workers. We stand with unions. We stand for the right to organize. Tell you who else we stand for. Those classroom educators, those school teachers, those counselors, those librarians, the people who make public education possible. I'll tell you why we stand with them right now. Not only do they provide the value that we count on and maybe take for granted in our lives and in our communities. Like you, I can think of the public school teacher who forever changed my life in the 6th grade at Mesita Elementary. Mary Strummer believed in me, helped me to believe in myself, gave me some of the confidence I was lacking, stoked this curiosity about the rest of the world, said, hey Beto, if you put your mind to it, if you work hard, if you catch a break or two, anything for you is possible. She said the same thing to every other kid in that class, regardless of the differences between us. But it's not just that causes us to back our school teachers and our educators today. It's because in this very community, on average, they're underpaid more than $14,000 a year against the national average. And I'm not talking to get to the highest paid school teacher in America. I'm just talking about getting to average right now for more than $14,000 down. If you're a retired teacher in this community, you have not seen a cost of living adjustment since the year 2004. Prices may have gone up just a little bit since 2004. For the price of gas, for your property taxes, medication, what you buy at the grocery store, life is more expensive 18 years later. And though you gave the best years of your life to all of us, we as a state, as a people, reflected through our current government, we have failed you and we owe you better. To that teacher in the classroom right now, underpaid so that she's working 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet, who out of her own pocket, when school starts in the next couple of weeks, will decorate her own classroom, who when that kid shows up without the right school supplies or textbook, will out of her own pocket pay for it. And should he be wearing the same dirty jeans and t-shirt Monday through Friday, out of her own pocket pays for a new set of clothes, so on Monday he can hold his head high and have that confidence in himself that Mary Strummer gave to me in the 6th grade. When you tell us that you want to be treated with respect and the dignity that you deserve, when you share with us that you'll do a better job of connecting with those kids if we will just cancel the STAR test and focus on bringing out the best of who's in front of us, I'll tell you what, we choose to stand on the side of public education, unless anyone labor under the illusion that there aren't 2 sides to this. Your current governor wants to take your public tax dollars out of your public school classroom, turn them into vouchers, and send them to private schools. Already underfunded public education, he wants to drain even more money from it. He wants to tell you what version of history you are allowed to tell. I cannot tell you how many teachers I have met who say, Beto, am I allowed to teach the story of Dr. Lawrence Nixon, who founds the first chapter of the NAACP in the state of Texas in El Paso in 1914, when the state legislature in 23 implements the white primary, disallowing black Texans from voting. He contests that all the way to the Supreme Court, not once, but twice, fully integrating our elections? Is that okay to teach? Or does that run afoul of CRT and the governor of the state of Texas? Teachers who say, you know what? Now I'm asked to turn in the parents of transgender kids and accuse them of child abuse and take their children from them and turn them over to CPS, an agency that has lost the lives of 100 kids since the year 2020. I tell you what, to the teachers in the room, the ones who decided to stay in the profession, and I don't blame those of you who are thinking about leaving, given the circumstances under which you work right now. You are our heroes. We have got your back. We're going to fight for you. When we win this election, we're going to make sure that you are paid enough to just have one job. We're going to make sure that we increase that cost of living adjustment every year for every educator. We're going to improve your health insurance so you can actually use it and be well enough and healthy enough to be able to go into that classroom and connect with those kids and forever for the better change their lives. We're on your side of this line. To those of you who are here right now and are not fortunate enough, because I would argue it is only a matter of luck as to whether or not you have health insurance, whether you can see a doctor, whether you can be treated for your diabetes or glaucoma or curable cancer or even the flu in the least insured state in America. To those of you who are schizophrenic, who have bipolar disorder, who've been diagnosed as clinically depressed, but have not been eligible for any kind of insurance because we have failed to expand Medicaid in the state, who find yourselves some nights in the county jail because the county jail has become the largest provider of mental health care services in Jefferson County. I just want to say to you, we are on your side of the line. We're going to fight for you and have your back. We're going to expand Medicaid and bring $10 billion a year into our communities. We're going to connect more people with care. We're going to save more lives. We're going to recruit more providers into underserved communities. It's the right thing to do. We together are going to do it. If you are a woman and you find yourself living in a state that has gone back to the medieval times, that no longer allows you to make your own decisions for yourself and your future, I'm here to tell you we are on your side of the line, and we're going to fight to make sure you make every decision about your own body, your own future, and your own health care. Every time. And we're going to stand. I see this poster, Olivia Juliana, who, when Matt Gaetz went after her, she went back after her for all of us and raised more than $1 million to give up to providers, to connect more women with care. One of our heroes. And Olivia is a great example of this. If you think that this is a bridge too far for us, because we have a total abortion ban with no exception for rape or incest in the state of Texas, and you say, how in the world are we going to overcome this? Just remember, prior to 1973, we had a total abortion ban in Texas with no exception for rape or incest. Now, no one came in from the outside to save the day, to ride to our rescue, to be that knight in shining armor. It was Texas women like Jane Roe of Roe versus Wade, the two attorneys who argued her case before the Supreme Court, Linda Coffey, who still lives in Dallas, Sarah Weddington from that liberal bastion of Abilene, Texas, who made sure that the right to privacy, to make that decision that is personal to you, very often painful, is yours and yours alone for a half century. The women of Texas won that right 49 years ago. The women of Texas will win it back in the year 2022. We are on your side of this line. If you're a member of the LGBTQ community, and you, like I, thought, hey, progress is inevitable. Victories won are always final. And you woke up to the news that not only had the Supreme Court, through the Dobbs decision, overturned Roe versus Wade, but Justice Clarence Thomas says that he's coming for you next. Not only does he want to cancel the right to contraception, which is just nuts, I don't know where you get that, But he's coming after same-sex intimacy, marriage equality next on the chopping block. I want to tell you, we're on your side of that fight, your side of the line. We're going to fight for every Texan to be who they are, to love who they want to love. We're proud of you. We're going to fight for you. This is your state as much as it is anybody else's. You all with me on this? We're going to do it. If you're a kid who, like my kids, are about to start their next school year, in El Paso, EPISD, our school year starts the day after tomorrow. 9 weeks after Uvalde. And our governor has yet to call a special session to literally do anything. And I mean just anything. If you want to do mental health care, call that special session and do mental health care. If you want to do school safety and harden those schools, call the special session and harden those schools. If you want to have some guts and stand up to the NRA and ensure we have universal background checks and red flag laws and raise the minimum age of purchase to 21 for an AR-15, and get it done or get out of the way. To the kids who are here and to the kids that we all represent through our votes and through our action, the young ones who unfortunately still do not have a voice or a vote in the outcome of this election, we know that you're counting on us. And we know that at some point in the future, these little folks are going to look back on this moment and ask us, hey mom, hey dad, grandpa, grandma, what did you do? 19 kids were shot in cold blood with a weapon originally designed for use in war. 2 of their teachers who'd already sacrificed their entire adult life for these kids literally put their bodies between that gunman and those kids. When you still had the chance to do something, what did you do? We're going to say, listen, we stood on your side of the line. We stood up against the NRA and the gun lobby. We stood for common sense gun legislation that protects the Second Amendment while doing a far better job of protecting our lives. And lastly, some came to this country against their will, kidnapped in Africa, brought here to literally build the wealth and the success of America and the state of Texas. And for those who think that only lasted until Appomattox in 1865 or the Emancipation Proclamation, look what happened in Texas after Reconstruction. This perverse reading of the 13th Amendment, which outlaws slavery with the exception for those who have committed crimes, was interpreted by sheriffs throughout this state in the late 19th and early 20th century to mean you can arrest any black man, any black boy to serve any labor need you have in any community. Don't believe me? Look at who built the state capitol in Austin, Texas. It was these convict laborers who were leased to these construction firms who made a fortune on the labor of those who had literally done nothing wrong at all. I want to just say this right now. We're going to acknowledge that we should, can, and will do far better for one another. When we see that this country has the largest prison population, bar none, and within this country, this state has the largest prison population of any state. And when we look at that prison population, and it is overwhelmingly black and brown, too many there punished, incarcerated for possession of a substance that is legal in almost every other state in the country. We are going to legalize marijuana in the state of Texas. We are going to expunge the arrest records for anyone who has a conviction for possession of marijuana in the state of Texas. We're going to start addressing some of the systemic failings that we have in the state to make sure that everyone can get ahead. And we're going to look at those in power are currently trying to scapegoat. I don't know if you've noticed this, but when you ask Greg Abbott why he cannot keep the lights on or the heat running or the water flowing for our fellow Texans who live under ERCOT, He'll say, you know, watch out for CRT, or those transgender kids are coming to get us, lock your bathrooms. Or he'll do this. Hey, look at the border. There's an invasion taking place. These people want to come in and get us. Let me put up this wall. Let me involuntarily activate 10,000 members of the Guard. Let me spend $5 to $6 billion just this last year of your money and do nothing to solve the problem, the real problem of fentanyl coming into this country, into this state, or those who would traffic in human beings. These stunts, that rhetoric, is not only unhelpful, not only dangerous, it is deadly. In my hometown, in 2019, I know you all know this, and it's painful for us to talk about it, but 23 people were slaughtered in a Walmart the Saturday before school started that year. And they were slaughtered by a guy who bought an AK-47 in Allen, Texas. When he bought it, his mom called the police and said, I have no idea why my son wants this weapon. Can you help me out? Because we had no red flag laws on the book at that time, nor do we today. There was nothing those cops could do. But I'll tell you what, he was answering a call that he heard from those who hold these positions of power in this country. When the president refers to immigrants as animals or an infestation, which is how I talk about cockroaches or rats or those things that we want to exterminate, when Governor Abbott says that we've got to take matters into our own hands, that's a direct quote, and defend ourselves against this invasion, you get something that otherwise would never happen. 23 people were killed in a matter of minutes in a city with more than 1 million people, where fewer than 20 are killed on average the entire year. When we fail to solve the challenges that we have at our border, to do something about immigration, we allow demagogues to vilify the most vulnerable among us. And the results and the outcomes are something we're going to have to live with forever until we change this. Here's my proposal. After listening to you and so many of your fellow Texans, let's first acknowledge we are so lucky that so many immigrants want to come to this country in the first place and do good for America, and do good for themselves and their communities. Let's say right now that those young people that we call dreamers, who came here at the age of 2 or 3 or 4, they will, if we have anything to do about it, be United States citizens in this state so they can contribute to their full potential. For those who want to work some of the toughest jobs in America, picking the food that we depend on, working those cotton gins, being out in the field, whether it's agriculture, cattle raising, or the slaughterhouses that prepare the meat that we're going to eat for tonight's meal, so often it is immigrants who come into this country for the privilege of doing this work. We're going to make sure that there is a safe, legal, orderly path for people to come here if they want to work, if they want to join family, if they're seeking asylum because they cannot go back to the countries from which they came. When we take care of that, and that is 95% plus of those who are trying to come into the country right now, when we find that legal, safe, orderly path for them, that problem is off the table. And we can focus like a laser on anybody who wants to come here to do us harm. If they're bringing illegal drugs, if they're trafficking in human beings, we will stop them because we can now see them. Today, they're needles in a gigantic haystack. We remove that haystack. It is all about finding those who want to hurt us. Solutions instead of stunts. Recognizing that we are a state of people who came here and made it great in the first place, right? So, that's what we're for. And that's the contrast to Greg Abbott. The chaos, the cruelty, the corruption, the incompetence of this guy, who is more interested in serving his political career or his biggest donors or these corporations that we have been battling right here in Beaumont, Texas, than he is in serving the people of this community. You tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think he holds town hall meetings right here in this Union Hall. At least not very often, right? If we're going to achieve this vision, if we're going to overcome this guy, it's going to take all of us doing all we can with what we have, where we are. And I ask you to join me in this fight. Angela and Chrissy are in the back. They're wearing yellow vests. We have 2 other volunteers here in yellow vests. All of them are holding clipboards. And on those clipboards, they will add your name if you're willing to knock on doors and go meet the voters who are going to decide the outcome of this election. It will not be won solely by the candidate or that candidate's political party. We can raise all the money in the world. We can devise the most amazing television ads. You may or may not see them. You may have developed an immunity to them. But if another human being from this community knocks on your door, locks eyes with you, face to face, human being to human being, you will never, ever forget that conversation. And for the hundreds of thousands of our fellow Texans who have not been voting, whose voices have not been heard, this is their invitation to come into this democracy, participate in this election, and provide our margin of victory on the night of November 8th. You all with me on this? We're going to do this together. We're going to do this for one another. We're going to make each other and the generations that follow us proud. We're going to have a moment to take a few questions and hear your comments. Cynthia Cano, who is right over here in the green shirt, has another microphone. But as she gets ready to recognize our first question, on behalf of everyone in this campaign, I just want to say thank you, Beaumont, for having us out and having our back as well. Yeah, I'm going to school. Here's what it is. Thank you. Just come over.
Before we do that, I was told there's some VIPs we need to recognize. Miss Misty Bishops, Texas Senate District 4. Misty, are you here?
Thank you, Misty.
We have the amazing Zena Stevens, the sheriff.
Sheriff, yeah.
And also, please give a round of applause for Chelsea Ramos, candidate for 317 District Court.
All right, Chelsea Ramos.
Now, you raise your hand. I will make my way around to the room. I see the first one over here. And then I would just ask to keep it to one question, please, so we can get to as many hands as we possibly can.
All right. I have 3 autoimmune diseases, and with the current return of Roe v. Wade, there is a drug called methotrexate that is used to treat cancer. It has been for decades, and also used to treat autoimmune diseases. With Roe v. Wade being overturned, there are women that are being turned away at pharmacies trying to fill prescriptions of methotrexate. I wanted to know if you were aware of that. Not only because it can cause miscarriage. So if you're a man and you walk in a pharmacy, you're able to obtain this medication to treat your autoimmune diseases or treat cancer. MD Anderson uses it all the time. But women of childbearing age are being refused this drug in the Golden Triangle. So I wanted to know, A, were you aware of that? And B, do you have any ideas or anything that you could put in motion that would help people to be able to obtain this life-saving medication?
Thank you for being here. Thanks for sharing this. This is so helpful. This is why we hold these town hall meetings. And this is how we break through to people who may be on the other side of this line currently that I talked about. I met a woman in Dallas who told me that she's prescribed methotrexate for a very aggressive form of arthritis. But because she is of childbearing age, she can no longer receive the prescription in Dallas, Texas. She says, look, I'm lucky, I have privilege, I can fly to California, which is where I go fill that prescription right now. But she said, you know what, Beto, guess how long I'm staying in this state when I have to fly out of state to just treat arthritis. You've heard other proposals coming down the pike where if you try to leave this state and you're of childbearing age and you're a woman, they're going to check your travel documents and make sure that you're not going to do something that they don't agree with here. Already, Republican state legislators have written a letter on Freedom Caucus letterhead and sent it to some of the largest firms in Texas and said, don't you dare fund the out-of-state travel of your female employees. Stranger than fiction, hard for us to have cooked up, and yet if we were just paying attention, they promised us they were going to do this if they got enough power, and this is exactly what they are doing. The reason I think it's so important to tell these stories, I'll just tell you, my very Catholic mother, when we have this conversation, and I say, Mom, I know that this probably was not the intention of folks who consider themselves pro-life, but over the last 10 years, during this continuous attack on abortion rights, as almost every reproductive health care clinic in Texas has closed, not only has it become impossible to get an abortion, but try getting a cervical cancer screening, try seeing a family planning provider, try going to a doctor of any kind in so many of our underserved communities right now. That helps to explain why Texas leads the developed world in a maternal mortality crisis that is 3 times as deadly for black women in the state of Texas as it is for white women in the state of Texas. I tell my mom that, and I can see that there is some common ground that is opening up between us. When a reminder that we lead the country not only in the rate of teen pregnancy, but repeat teen pregnancy, because we don't have these family planning services, I have got her attention. So look, first order of business is to win this race, because it will be the first time in 32 years that we will have elected a pro-choice Democrat, the last one being the great Ann Richards. Right here. That will send shockwaves through the system. It'll bring the other side to the table. It gives us the power to veto other bad ideas that are coming down, and we finally have some leverage. And I'm going to learn something about leverage from President Carl, who he and his membership did something extraordinary in their negotiations. I want to make sure that we have that same tenacity, that same strength, that same courage when we fight for the women of this state. Thank you for asking the question. Appreciate it.
Your manager, I mean, I fought with Beto real hard for when we were going against Cruz in El Paso, Texas. I had the pleasure. And I'm so happy to see my white Obama, the black side of him. And I told him once he was like Kennedy to me, and I still believe that. You know, I wanted to ask you, what do you see different from that fight? Because I just knew we won. When we were standing in the stadium, we were waiting in El Paso. I just knew we just had it. And what do you see differently? Because I see that you're more black educated on our passion, the things that happen with us, our plight. You know, I see that now, and I just love Cynthia. I'm so glad that she's here again. And what do you see? I mean, you know, I'm with you. You know, I love your mother. She's a beautiful woman. What do you see? What do you see as far as being victorious this time? Because I thought we won last time.
Yes, I sure did too. And when you all saw when President Trump forced Greg Abbott last year to authorize a recount in Texas of the 2020 election that Trump won in Texas, and I just thought, well, while you're at it, go recount 2018, because I think we won that one too. So, we were, folks, it's because of everyone in the room, it's because of you. Together, in 2018, we produced the largest voter turnout in a midterm since 1970. Young voter turnout. Young people in the room, you were up 504% from the previous midterm election. We became the first Democratic campaign to win the 4 major metro areas and their surrounding counties since LBJ did it in 1964. Though we didn't beat Cruz, we helped to flip control of the House of Representatives through 2 big congressional pickups in Houston and in Dallas, 12 new Democratic state reps. In Harris County alone, 17 African American women won judicial positions in 2018. We did some big work that transformed this state. And the question is, how do we bring it home now in 2022? One, you gotta know that we are building on that base. So we made millions of voter contacts in 2018. Some of you did them, knocking on doors, making phone calls, texting folks. We have all those relationships, that information. We're right back at those doors confirming that they will be with us in this election. That's huge, and that's a big difference. We've raised $3 million more than Greg Abbott in the last reporting period from 500,000 unique contributions. If you haven't heard this yet, I want to share with you that our largest group of contributors, bar none, to the campaign has been school teachers in the state of Texas. Those are the ones who raised $27 million. My heroes. And I don't know what this counts for anymore, because who can predict this stuff, but Quinnipiac, which is the gold standard in political polling, took the measure of this race in December. We'd just gotten in. And they had Greg Abbott up 15 points against us. Well, they measured it again a few weeks back. He's down to 5 points ahead, and we're gaining ground every single day. And on this trip, over the last 10 days, we've been to communities like Pecos, like Muleshoe, like Spearman, like Dalhart, like Pampa, like Quanah. Just today, we were in Hemp Hill and Woodville. Yesterday, we were in Palestine with 450 people in Palestine, Texas. Folks are showing up in record numbers. And here's another one of the big differences that makes me feel so good about what we're doing. We are so clearly drawing this line that you heard me talk about at the outset. This other guy who literally cannot keep the lights on, who allowed the energy corporations, the pipeline companies, the traders to take $11 billion from us over 5 days when people in Texas were literally freezing to death last February, and then pass the bill on to all of us, even those of us in El Paso and Beaumont who are not part of ERCOT. We're paying $45 more per month on average. We call that the Abbott tax. Go ahead and pass that one around. We show the $20 billion more in property taxes that we're all paying on his watch. And remember this, the guy who, when the reporter asked him during that abortion bill signing ceremony, Mr. Governor, you know that there's no exception for rape? And he says, oh, that's okay, we're going to eliminate rape in the state of Texas. More rapes have been committed in the state of Texas than any other state. Right now, in DPS headquarters, which he has control over in Austin, Texas, there are thousands of untested rape cases. The ability to bring a rapist to justice has declined by half on his watch. So whether it's the inflation that he's causing, the incompetence and corruption when it comes to the grid, the fact that we are less safe and criminals are doing far better under Greg Abbott than they ever have before, we're going to take the case to this guy every day, every night, keep him on the ropes and the back foot, and we are going to win this together. We're going to win this. Here we go.
All right, Beto, this is my wife and my hero. She's a kindergarten teacher, public school teacher.
Yeah! Our hero too.
You're 100% right. If, God forbid, she had to stand between a bullet and a student, she would do it. My question is, what can I do to make sure she should never have to?
Thanks for being here. Thank you for what you do. And I think it's a real act of courage. And maybe we throw that word around too much, but in this case it is true. To go back into that classroom, given all of the challenges that you already face before we even think about a school shooting. I cannot tell you how many educators have approached me since Uvalde who told me they're leaving the profession, that's just it, they're not going back. Others, a chemistry teacher in San Antonio who said, you know what, I feel kind of guilty because my classroom as a chemistry teacher has these big lab tables and I and my students can hide behind them. I think we're a little bit better protected than the English teacher or the social studies teacher or the math teacher down the hall. We were in Lubbock, Texas. Lest anybody think this is just a blue city or Democratic issue that people are concerned about. And a reliable conservative Republican voter says, my 9-year-old, before he goes back into that classroom this academic year, he's already tested all of the crank wound windows. He knows which ones are stuck and which ones work. And I've told him as his father, this guy tells me, that you are not to hide under your desk, you're not to go into the closet. I don't care what they told you in the active shooter drill. You're getting the hell out of that classroom through that window that works. Now, why in the world are we having these conversations with our kids? Or you having this conversation with your wife? And I mentioned earlier, at some point, we are going to have to face an accounting. I mean, that's our conscience, it's our creator. For me, it's my kids. They're going to school on Monday. They're going right back into this with not a single thing changing. And listen, for the educators, you know your classroom, you know your campus, you know your district better than I ever will. If there are things that we can do to, quote unquote, harden that campus and improve security, let's follow your lead. Let's do that. The governor, the day after that Uvalde shooting, he says, oh, it's a mental health care issue. The interesting thing about that, by the way, is that the month before, he withdrew $211 million from the mental health care budget. We are 51st in mental health care spending already in the state of Texas. But listen, let's take him at his word. I do think we need more mental health care spending. Let's go ahead and do that. But if we fail to confront the challenge, the elephant in the room, that we are allowing 18-year-olds to buy not one, but 2 weapons originally designed for use in combat, whose high impact, high velocity round, when it hits your body, it liquefies everything inside. That AR-15 was designed for use originally in Vietnam. It's supposed to penetrate the enemy soldier's helmet at 500 feet. Those kids did not have a helmet on. They were not 500 feet away. They were much closer. Their parents and the physicians who saw them after that shooting had to identify them by DNA and by the shoes that they were wearing. So look, I know that this is, and maybe fewer people know it the way I know that this is, a tough issue to talk about in Texas. But our kids are going to say to us down the road, I don't care how tough it was, I hope you did the right thing. So, if we will put pressure on those who represent us, and it does not matter, no me importa if they're Republicans or Democrats, let's just assume that they have the well-being of our kids and our families at heart, and just say, look, we may not see eye to eye on all this. I mean, for example, I for one don't think anyone should have an AR-15 or an AK-47. Keep that on the battlefield. We don't need it in our community. But even if we can't get there together, we can raise the minimum age of purchase. That kid in Uvalde, he waited patiently because the law said you have to be 18 to buy one of these things. He didn't, people say, well, criminals will just do whatever the hell criminals want to do. And in some cases, that might be true. But this guy followed the law. The law said he needed to be 18. He waited until he was 18. Walked into that gun store, legally bought those 2 AR-15s and those hundreds of rounds of ammunition. If we raise the age to 21, we've at least purchased 3 more years for some kind of intervention, for his brain to continue to form and develop. You know, your prefrontal cortex is not connected when you're 18. You're still developing. Your impulse control is a little bit diminished. You still have some growing to do, okay? So there's that. There's a universal background check, and folks will say, hey, I just bought a firearm yesterday at the store, Beto. I had to go through a background check. And I get that. But if you buy from a private seller, you don't have to go through a background check. Midland, Odessa. A month after the El Paso shooting in 2019, guy walks into a gun store, tries to buy an AR-15, doesn't pass the background check. Good, that works. So he goes to a private seller and buys the exact same firearm out of the trunk of that guy's car, turns around and uses it on people in his community, killing 8 of them. A background check, a universal one, would have prevented that. Red flag laws, that means you already have the firearm, but you're sending signals that you're going to use that firearm against yourself, against your wife or your boyfriend or your girlfriend, against the kids in your classroom. The Uvalde shooter, prior to buying those firearms, was called the school shooter by his friends because he was sending these signals out and the people around him were picking them up. I mentioned the mom of the shooter in El Paso calling the police in Allen, Texas. We do not have a law on the books right now that allows us to intervene. So, raising the minimum age of purchase, ensuring we have universal background checks, having a red flag law, that does nothing to diminish your Second Amendment right to own that firearm. Own it all you want. All we ask is that you own it responsibly and you do a better job of protecting your wife, you in that classroom, and those kids in front of you, because the only thing we want you worried about is how you're going to make sure that you draw forth their love of learning. That's it. We're behind you. We're with you. We're on your side of the line when it comes to this one. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Mayor, thanks for being here.
Thank you. I just want to say welcome to Beaumont, and I just want you to know that Beaumont, Jefferson County, we got you.
Yeah. Thank you.
I want to say to everyone in this room, please, let's not wait. Let's get started now. Get out there. Make sure everyone in your family is registered. We have enough people registered to win this, but we just got to make sure that they all show up to the polls. So please, everyone, don't take anyone for granted. Just make sure that you're getting everyone that you know to the polls. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I have a question for my son. He couldn't be here tonight.
Please.
And he says, as a Texas Union pipeliner for 10 years, my experience at a union workyard, Trump crews and Abbott bumper stickers on every truck. What do you do to convince these blue-collar and middle-class men and women that they're voting for the wrong party? We have union members that are voting for a party that doesn't support them.
Thank you for being here. I think in answer to your son's question, we have got to show up for one another and be there for them. It is really hard to fly underneath the constant barrage of Fox News right now. It's going to try to scare you with every caricature under the sun about who we are. That we're socialists, that we're un-American, that we're open borders, that we're whatever they're going to make up next. The only way I know to get past that is to literally be with people where they are. I mentioned the first stop today was in Hemp Hill, Texas. And in Hemp Hill, Texas, there were supporters. There were folks who came to oppose our visit. And then there were those who just came to sit and listen and hear what I had to say. One of the people there, a guy named Gary, wearing a Make America Again hat, Make America Great Again hat, wearing a red MAGA shirt as well. You know, reading the book by the cover, I did not think he was with us, right? He got up and he asked a question, just as you did right now, and he said, hey, look, I feel like I have followed the rules. I've worked my tail off. My mom emigrated from Canada. She worked 3 jobs to make sure that I and my World War II disabled veteran dad had what we needed. And I just feel like right now there are some people who aren't following the rules, who aren't following the law. And I'm concerned about what I'm reading and what I'm seeing, especially at the southern border. Very legitimate question, and he asked it so civilly and politely, it brought me in, especially the story about his mom sacrificing for him. And so I said what I shared with you earlier. I said, look, we owe you and everyone, including those immigrants who want to come here, a safe, legal, orderly path. You want to come to this country? Wonderful. Follow our laws. And on our side, we're going to update our laws to reflect our values, our interests, and our needs. I talked about some of the ways that we're going to be able to do that. We had a longer conversation. He comes up afterwards to shake my hand, no joke, gives Cynthia Cano a great big hug, and says, you know what, I may vote for you in this election. And that's not the book I thought I was reading. So, here we are in Southeast Texas, and you look at the refining capacity in these communities. You look at the workers who produce the energy independence for America. You know, I drove here today in a Toyota Tundra, and it burns gasoline. And I thank God that we extracted these resources from this state, we refined them in this community, and we no longer have to go to war half a world away to secure our energy lines, right? We are independent because of those working these jobs. People, perhaps like your son, and those who he works with. So please tell him I'm so grateful for and proud of the work that he does. And for some period, really for the foreseeable future, we're going to still have some oil and gas needs in this state. Maybe even more so, given inflation that we have right now and the price of gas. Let's make sure that we're producing enough to meet our needs. And given the fact that Russia just invaded Ukraine, and many of us just learned that 10% of the oil that we're using in this country was imported from Russia, I'd like to see more of that come here. But if we can marry that with some of the amazing things that I've seen at Lamar University, where you're doing groundbreaking work on geothermal, which has a one-to-one match on the skill set and experience and expertise that we get from drilling for oil and gas. Add to that wind, hydrogen, solar, battery storage. We own the energy world right now, but we won't own it going forward if we don't get after it. And I'll tell you this, the steel workers, members of the AFL-CIO, the electricians, the pipe fitters, the plumbers, all those folks I mentioned earlier, wrote a climate jobs plan for the state of Texas. It's the folks who are members of this union right here who propose this plan. They're not Democrats, they're not Republicans, they're not independents. They're folks who want to make sure that they have great jobs, that they have a seat at the table as we write the energy policy for this century. You know what they came up with? It's many of those industries that I just talked about, making sure that they're high-paying, high-value, high-skilled jobs that are union jobs. And also, in addition, making sure that we retrofit buildings just like this, our homes, our offices, our schools, to be more energy efficient. It demands less from the grid. It allows us to confront the challenge of climate before it's too late. And those are great jobs that you cannot outsource anywhere else. So please tell your son, and please ask him to tell his co-workers, we're on their side of the line. We're fighting for them as working Texans. Thank you for being here. And we're going to show up for them. Thank you.
Hey Beto, glad to see you again. We were here last time you were in Beaumont. And,
thanks for coming out.
Back to your discussion on the background checks on guns. My husband recently went and bought a gun in Corpus Christi, and he was asked if he had a license to carry, which he does, which is 3 years old. The man looked at it and said, okay, that's all I need. My husband came out there and said, how does he know I haven't robbed a bank since then? How does he know anything? He asked nothing of me.
Well, we used to need that license to carry, to take that gun out.
Right, and in fact, at the time we did take our class, it was still a law, which the great thing was when you went and bought a gun, you had to have a background check. Then when you took the class, you had to have a background check, which was a catch-all in case you bought it from Bubba and didn't get one the first time, you got it the second time. But now you got one, and it's 2 or 3 years old. They don't know what kind of crimes you commit. The man he didn't do his job. Just because my husband and myself have a license to carry doesn't mean that we hadn't done something since then. He still should have had to do a background check when he bought it from that business. And that shocked both of us.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Listen, that license to carry program really was kind of the pride for responsible gun owners in most of the rest of the country. It meant that if you wanted to take a firearm out onto the streets and even onto a college campus, or really almost anywhere you wanted to go unless it was expressly prohibited, you had to go under a background check. You had to have some firearms training so that we know that you're proficient in using this thing. And I've met firearms instructors who say, back when we had a license to carry, people would come in, first-time gun owners, they didn't know what end the bullet came out of. And thank God I was there. But Greg Abbott, there's this proposal from the NRA and the gun lobby and the folks who make money off of selling these things. And we don't begrudge them a profit, but when it comes at the expense of our lives, we might have a problem there. He listens to them and signs a bill that does away with license to carry and replaces it with something called permitless carry, where now there's no background check, no license, no vetting, no proficiency, no training at all. You're just good to go to take that gun out on the streets. The reason so many cops and sheriff's deputies argued against this and begged the governor not to sign it was because 38,000 times, and I know the sheriff knows this, 38,000 times over the last 5 years, a license to carry request was denied in the state of Texas. 38,000 times they deemed that person applying just too dangerous to themselves or to all of us. Maybe a violent criminal background that can lead us to believe that they'd use that firearm against their wife or against somebody at work. Well, now that we have permitless carry, all 38,000 of those people are really free to carry those guns on our streets, and then we're none the wiser or the safer for it. And now imagine this. The tens of thousands of people who never applied for a license to carry back when we had it because they knew they wouldn't have passed the background check, they're out there as well. More cops, more sheriff's deputies, more members of law enforcement have been gunned down in this state than any other in the Union. We are seeing a spike in gun violence right now. This is not safe. This is not part of that responsible tradition of gun ownership that we had in Texas. So, to your point, let's get back to something that makes sense. Let's listen to law enforcement. Let's repeal permitless carry and re-implement that background check if you want to carry in public. Thanks for asking.
By the door, in the back, by the door.
Hi, Beto. My name is Jimmy John Akins. I'm the chair of the Triangle Caucus. We gather together to focus on the LGBTQ+ community of Southeast Texas. Our primary focus has been get out the vote. My concern is with the passing or the deletion of Roe versus Wade. And I think that they're going to go for marriage equality too. I have several friends that are concerned about this, that they're going to get a knock on the door in the middle of the night and be dragged out to the streets. There is so much anti-LGBTQ legislation out there these days. What are you going to do to bridge the gap between the communities so that I feel safe and my friends and family, brothers and sisters feel safe?
Thanks for being here. Thanks for the work that you do. Thanks for asking the question. I don't know about you all, and not all of us are Democrats in this room, right? And if you're a Republican, you're welcome here. Independents, we love you too. We want everybody to be represented. But for my friends who are Democrats, many of us are sick and tired of Democrats being on the defensive, right? And being on the back foot and really just taking it, always reacting and responding instead of being on the offense, on the attack, and really pushing the issue. And I think part of the reason that we got to where we are right now with this total abortion ban, and next on the block is same-sex intimacy, a revival of our sodomy laws in the state of Texas, which they are proposing right now, and ending marriage equality, is because we have not been standing up and fighting for one another and been proud of who we are. So not only do we need to stop the bad stuff that is coming down the pike, and you know as soon as this next legislative session starts, they've already proposed a Don't Say Gay bill for this next year. Someone's going to propose, after Justice Clarence Thomas's concurring opinion, that we end marriage equality in the state of Texas and try to force that back up to the Supreme Court. Not only do we have to fight that as well, but we got to go on the offense. And what does that mean? So in Texas today, though it is not okay, though this is not right, it is perfectly legal to fire someone or refuse to hire them because they're gay. Though in Texas, even though this is not right and it's not okay, it is perfectly legal to deny a same-sex couple the ability to adopt a child. That's legal in the state of Texas. And of course, you know that we have a governor who's basically written a search warrant at large for families of transgender kids, accusing those parents of child abuse in the state of Texas. So in addition to winning this race on a platform that proudly supports the LGBTQ community, we've got to go change those laws on the book. We got to make sure that if you are seeking a job, they cannot discriminate against you based on anything, whether it's the color of your skin, your gender, your sexual orientation, your country of national origin. None of that matters. What only matters is your talent and your drive. We're going to recognize you for the content of your character and nothing else here in the state of Texas. If you want to adopt a child, the same way. If you are the parent of a transgender child, and I've met the parents of these transgender kids who, I tell you what, folks, are some of the best parents I've ever met. They're helping their kid navigate one of the toughest moments that I can imagine in a child's life. And year after year, many of them take their kids to the state capitol to remind the legislators who are proposing the next anti-trans bill what this does to their kids, the likelihood that their kid will try to harm themselves or even take their own lives. And they do it in the most generous, gracious way. If that was my kid, I would be so angry. I would be spitting mad. But they do this with compassion, and they try to invoke the empathy of these Republican legislators to get them to do the right thing. I love that. Let's have their backs, but let's also make sure that we're fighting for them tooth and nail to make sure that this state is their state just as much as it is anybody else's state. So you've got my commitment to be the leader that we needed in Texas for this and every single community in Texas. Thank you.
To your right, to your right.
Here we go.
All right, you'll have to excuse me. I'm an educator and a master's student, so I came way over prepared. So I know that you've already mentioned about higher salaries for educators. However, connecting with other educators nationwide, we are experiencing a great exodus. And in states like Florida and Arizona, they are putting not as highly qualified individuals in the classroom to fill those spots. What is your plan to keep that from happening in Texas?
What a great question. Thank you. My youngest, who's 11, who just completed 5th grade, didn't have a permanent classroom teacher the entire academic year. And we love the subs. He had 5 of them. And I'm so grateful that they were willing to come in and help out. But you as an educator know what a difference it makes to be the same person day in, day out that forms a bond with that kid can depend on. When I tell that story, and it doesn't matter what part of the state I'm in, I see heads nodding or people raise their hands and say, that was my kid this last academic year. So that exodus that she is talking about is real, and it is by the thousands right now. We cannot compound the problem by putting people in the classroom who are not yet ready to be in the classroom. We've got to demand not only the education and the training and the mentorship, if we have anything to do with it, where you've got a teacher such as yourself with the expertise and experience who can spend valuable time with that incoming teacher to make sure that he or she is fully prepared for the classroom that next year. But we also have to take it a step further. Right now, we ask you to take on tens of thousands of dollars of debt for the privilege of teaching our kids. We also ask you to work that second or third job to pay your way so you can return to the classroom Monday through Friday. This is a proposal. I want to try it out on you all. But if you're willing to join one of these in-demand professions like teaching or nursing after 2 years of a pandemic, and cost is an object. You just cannot put together the money, or you're going to take on so much debt you don't want to think about it. What if the state of Texas pays your way or clears the debt in front of you so that you can get that training, so that we don't bring in people who do not have the expertise or experience necessary and place them into those classrooms? We have got to have your back, because I cannot think of a more important thing for the future of the state of Texas than our kids. And they're literally in your hands right now. So I want to make sure that we do everything we can for you, including funding public education at the highest level. Thanks for asking the question. Really appreciate it.
Okay, we're back by the door.
Yes,
This
Ms.
is going to be our last question.
Last question, no pressure.
Hi. Okay, so you already touched on a little bit about the ERCOT and the power grid, and I was also wondering, we're staring down the barrel of the gun that is climate change. The world's kind of actively ending, and ExxonMobil is one of the biggest job providers in this area, and I was hoping if you could kind of give us your game plan to help address climate change and how that might affect us locally in this area. Yeah, do you have a game plan?
I do. Thank you for being here. Thanks for asking the question. You're absolutely right. There is no bigger challenge, no more existential threat to us. And your generation will realize whatever we do more than mine will. I mean, the consequences fall on you and the very youngest in this room. So I'm glad you're asking. It begins with these elections, and not just the election for governor. It's the state reps, it's Janet Dunning. She mentioned Jay Claber, who's running for land commissioner. His entire platform as land commissioner is not only protecting the water, the soil, and the air of the state, but confronting climate change before it's too late. I mentioned earlier that we own the energy world right now, or at least we're the capital of it right here in Texas. I mean, I don't know how many miles we are from Spindletop, but the carbon energy revolution really started right here in the state of Texas, right? But I also mentioned what's going on at Lamar University right now when it comes to geothermal. Some country is going to own that future because the world is only moving in one direction because of the crisis and the threat that you just described. Now, the country that owns it might be China. The country that owns it might be America. If it is America, I want it to be Texas that leads the way. And that's why, again, I'm so proud of these steel workers who work at this refinery, but who literally sat at the table with the AFL-CIO to come up with this climate jobs plan. To say, you know what, this is what we're doing today, but the generation that follows us, they have a chance to be working in these renewable energy jobs that we want to be just as high paying, just as high value, and just as much a union job as the jobs that we're working right now. They're not going to allow the future to happen to them. They are defining the future going forward. The more that we invest in these technologies around wind, solar, geothermal, hydrogen, battery, and distribution, the more we own that, the more jobs that are right here, and the faster we confront climate change before it's too late. You and others here in Jefferson County and our friends in Harris County probably understand this better than anyone else, because not only do you refine most of the fuel that we depend on, you bore the brunt of Hurricane Harvey and other superstorms and really man-made natural disasters that are a consequence of climate change. We also must be the leaders. You asked about the folks who work at the refinery. They're the ones that we're counting on to help us lead this right now. We're not leaving anybody behind. We're bringing everyone to the table. We want you to be there as well. When we win this, I expect you to be our partner in getting it done, okay? Thanks for coming out. Appreciate it. Let's photo. Listen, I want to thank you all so much. You know, some people spend their Saturday nights going to the movies, taking a loved one out to dinner, going to the bars or the nightclubs. The fact that you are here right now, taking a role in winning this next election, gives me confidence that we're going to get this done on the night of November 8th. Thank you all for being here. We love you, Beaumont. Thank you.
If y'all would like to stay and take a picture or say hi, the line will start over there on the left. Angela's raising her hand. So if you'd like to stay and take a picture, say a quick hello.